Now, as I said, I spoke with Rachel Smalley not long after the budget about the heartbreak from families that were relying on these drugs. And she said that, boy, that day was a big day. She thought she'd missed it in the budget. She joins me again. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Leah. How are you doing?
Well, I'm really good. So I want a little catch up with you because, you know, that day that we spoke, and the time from there to where we are now, there's been no let up on the government about this. What do you make of their, it seems like, obvious backtracking of sorts, and now their wheels are spinning to get some cancer drugs funded?
I think at the time they thought, or they realised just how complex it was going to be, that it was a big lofty promise. I think Shane Retty went in and did a lot of the early work on this, and given the nature of a political campaign, he didn't probably speak to Pharmac or the Cancer Control Agency. He didn't probably understand really the implications of this. Thought it looked good, sounded good, and then it became an election pledge. I think the moment they came into government and they started to engage with the likes of Pharmac and the Cancer Control Agency and the Ministry of Health, they would have gone, oh my goodness. And to be fair, Leah, every cancer charity and the likes of me, when this pledge first came out, we thought, wowza, we could literally, you know, run a bus through the holes in this pledge. It's going to be problematic. But because no one has done anything about cancer meds, I think most of us thought, let's roll with it, because we've got a political party who's prepared to start addressing the 40% of oncology drugs on that waiting list. So we'll take it and we'll try and resolve it after the fact. But it was unresolvable, and Pharmac was never going to meet them halfway on this. So I think they've realised with the fallout that followed, just suddenly how important and how many people are engaged in this, how many people are affected by cancer or know someone who is and are frustrated with Pharmac's performance. And I think, you know, to be fair to National, they've recognised it and they didn't double down. They didn't double down and say, no, you know, they're like, okay, we need to fix it. And to be, in that sense, I'm grateful to them. But you're right, it's been a shambles. All the commentary I've got coming out of the Beehive, it's a mess. And the communications around it have been appalling. So it's a terrible state.
Yeah. Can we have a little run through these three options? So instructing Pharmac to purchase the specific 13 drugs campaigned on. Well, Pharmac cannot be instructed, correct?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, what we know, Pharmac won't be told to do anything by anyone. We know that. Yeah. But I think also you want to be in that space. I mean, this is unique, to be fair. In Australia, a minister can pick up the phone to their Pharmac equivalent and go, I'm getting a lot of heat about this particular drug. What are we doing and why aren't we funding it? So, and I'm actually comfortable with that. Like, tell me why we wouldn't fund this drug. In New Zealand, they're like, no, it's got to be at arm's length. And you don't necessarily want ministers instructing Pharmac to do something, but at the same time, I don't know any other country in the world that's got a waiting list with 147 beds in it, and some have been on there for decades. You know, we are in a unique position here. So it's a good thing that you shouldn't be instructing Pharmac what to do. You need them to have independence, but we're in a mess. So, but that's not an option. It's really not an option to be telling them what to do. And Pharmac, I know, would resist that. They'd make it very difficult for the government. They wouldn't follow that order.
Well, how come then, why is it so laxed in Australia? When have they always been able to do that?
Yeah, so Australia's got a really interesting situation where they have, the equivalent of some of the committees that we've got in Pharmac. And if they come out and say, this is a good drug, you know, you've got all your clinicians and your experts on there, they go, this is a good drug, it's good for our health system, it saves this particular area, this is the type of patient need it's going to address, we think you should fund it. The government has to find the cash.
Yeah.
So that's the system in Australia. It's like, it's a good drug, the recommendations aren't willy-nilly. Like, they'll look at it and they'll go, this is a really good drug, actually, we should be funding it. And it makes sense. And so the government then has to find that cash. That's why it's different in Australia. And here, Pharmac is just in a bubble. They don't answer to anybody, and they make those decisions themselves.
Crazy. The second option, apparently, is setting up a separate agency to fulfil the promise. I mean, that sounds... Also a little bit.
Well, I guess what they could have done, they could have enabled the Cancer Control Agency they could have gone bigger and gone, right, let's make like a specialist cancer fund. Let's sit that with the Cancer Control Agency. Let's give them a significant uplift in cash and see if they can procure cancer medicines through there. Now, that's problematic, I guess, because Pharmac would say, well, hang on, what about us? We do cancer medicines, we do other meds, and so it just becomes clumsy. And I think if you look at who the Minister of Pharmac is, which is David Seymour, he's going to oppose hook, line and sinker, setting up another entity and creating more bureaucracy.
Yes.
He's just going to go, not going to happen. I'm trying to reduce that. So I don't think that's an option either.
Yeah. And the third option apparently is giving Pharmac a pool of money to work through its wish list until the drugs are funded. But, I mean, as you said, the wish list is huge. So
it is.
They'd get
I reckon what's been going on at the moment is I've been having a conversation, they would have been, tiptoeing around this with Pharmac and saying, okay, how much money do you need? Because Pharmac on that list, they prioritise all the drugs, like 1 to 149. But they don't make that available. No one knows what that order is. And that's a very good reason for commercial sensitivity. So you don't want pharma companies knowing, for example, that their drug is number one on the list, because that makes the negotiations tougher, in theory. So we don't know the priority of that list. So they would have been saying, what do you need? How much money do you need that we can take a chunk off that waiting list? And in that chunk, we've incorporated those 13 medicines. So there'll be other medicines that will get funded for mental health, for rare disorders, for chronic conditions, probably in that prioritised list. But they just want to make sure that they get through so that all of those 13 diseases that we've referenced here get either the drug that they've been promised or something that's better and newer. So that's why I think we've reached this sum of potentially, remember they had committed 70 million a year. They're now looking at committing, we're told, around 150 to 200 million a year. So that's a good chunk of that waiting list. So I think there's good that's come out of this disaster if we can make this happen. So that's why I think option 3 is a better one, and also it will, I think, calm the critics, calm the opposition, and National could kind of put this to bed. Now, where they get that money from, Leah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But, God, I hope they find it.
So, and you'll know this, Rach, that some medical experts are saying now that they're raising concerns that some of the drugs on that list are now outdated, and but then I've heard that they're saying, no, we'll get the 13 that you wanted. I think Retty said
it's interesting.
That. So what do we do?
Yeah. So one of the key critics of this is Chris Jackson, who wrote this report. I've been critical of him in the past because of his conflicts. He would be administering some of these drugs in his own private clinic. He's married to a Labour MP, and he has made no secret of the fact he knows Aisha Verrall quite well. He knows Diana Safati quite well as well.